All the definitions of populism have one thing in common, and that's the idea of the virtuous people versus the corrupt elite. Politics is really a struggle between these elites who are only about self-enrichment versus the people who have been deprived really of their democratic rights. The US had one of the world's oldest populist movements. In fact, the first movement to call itself populist, essentially representing indebted farmers against the big banks and also against the government. And the philosophy of that populism was that the people who work the land, the people who produce everything, should have a much greater share of the wealth. So populism has a very long tradition in the US, especially in rural areas where there's often a feeling that they get ignored. The main difference between left-wing populists and right-wing populists is who they really consider the elite to be. For the right, the elite always refers to the government, politicians, bureaucrats. For the left, it's more often the business elite. Donald Trump was almost running against the Republican Party in 2016. And this is one of the unique things about the American party system. Because the parties themselves don't control who gets to be a candidate, that's up to the voters of those parties. He got a lot of support from the really right-wing Republican Party faithful. They knew him as someone who symbolized success in America. They loved the fact that he didn't observe any political niceties at all. They thought that that was a sign of his authenticity. It is a little bit harder to be a populist when you are the elite yourself. But still, we've seen Trump, like populists before him around the world, even when they're in charge of the country, they say that they're nonetheless fighting a battle against this entrenched, permanent elite that are trying to thwart them. And for years, Trump's supporters referred to that as the deep state, referring to bureaucrats and career politicians who were getting in the way of Trump, or whether it's the QAnon conspiracy theory that says that Trump is literally fighting a global cabal of satanic child traffickers. All of that appeals to this idea that Trump, despite being the most powerful man on earth, is this besieged warrior. Populism isn't necessarily an ideology. It can be sort of a style of political performance. I think that the left-wing populism of Bernie Sanders actually offered kind of a more nuanced version when he said, you know, government has been corrupted, but at the same time, there is a very real possibility for the government to do good. Trump, he said to Christians, I've got the same enemies as you do, this politically correct liberal elite, and they liked that. They wanted a vulgar, bare-fisted fighter rather than their own leaders who were too constrained by Christian morality. Also, a large part of that evangelical base who have many believers who actually see Trump as a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. And Trump has really delivered for this group. The number of Supreme Court justices he's appointed is a really important thing for them. Also, the fact that while other presidents had promised to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, Trump actually did it. That has a lot of significance for them because they believe it is prophecy that God will restore Israel to the Jews as a precondition for the end times and the return of Christ. If you look at the kinds of problems that the US is facing during the pandemic at the moment, tens of millions of people facing joblessness, homelessness, absolute precarity. So while that is the case, I think that there is always going to be room for populism in America.